The morning my stepbrother popped champagne in the shop, the floor smelled like fresh sawdust and lemon oil, and the clock above the office door ticked loud enough to feel like a heartbeat running out of time. He lifted the bottle high, foam spilling onto the drafting table my dad had carved by hand, and shouted that the future belonged to his rightful son. He meant himself. I stood by the planer with a broom, feeling the grain of the handle biting my palm, saying nothing as every pair of eyes turned toward me. When the cork skittered beneath the bandsaw and his laughter echoed off the rafters, I caught my reflection in the glass of the office window, jaw clenched, knuckles white, a slow exhale fogging the pain. I didn't move. I didn't argue. I thought of the weight of my father's watch in my pocket, ticking, and the key on my ring that didn't fit any door I'd ever tried. Dad named the shop Weston & Son Woodworks long before there were two sons. He used to say it as a joke, a bet on a life he hoped would expand, and when I came along he sanded my name into the underside of the counter where customers signed their estimates. He was a big man with careful hands, the kind who measured twice and cut once. And he taught me to read wood like a map, where it wanted to bend, where it would split, how patient pressure could turn stubbornness into a curve. After my mother died, it was just the two of us in that echoing space in Maple Ridge, the smell of glue and varnish saturating our clothes. We built kitchen tables heavy enough to outlast arguments, cabinets that closed with a whisper, chairs that learned the shape of the families who sat in them. He married again when I was 16. It wasn't sudden for him, but it felt sudden to me. A woman with winter, bright hair who sold real estate and laughed with her whole face, and a boy a year older who collected limited edition sneakers and had a talent for getting what he wanted without appearing to ask. Liam was charming in a way I couldn't replicate, all easy smiles and brow hugs, and he only came to the shop when Dad was there, fidgeting with the laser level and talking about brand. I tried to be neutral. We weren't enemies. We weren't anything. He lived on the other side of the house and spent weekends at his mother's open houses, learning how to sell a promise. The summer before Dad got sick, the shop was doing well enough that we hired 2 more apprentices. Dad taught me QuickBooks in the evenings and spelled out a plan. I'd handle the custom work and the books, he'd scale back, and we'd keep it a family business in the way that meant sweat and long days and 1,000 small decisions nobody else ever saw. I remember his hands around a mug of black coffee, the watch on his wrist, catching the fluorescent light, and the way he looked at the sign above the counter like it held a private punchline. The diagnosis came like a nail through the sole of your boot. Sudden and obvious, nothing to do but sit with the pain while you figured out how deep it went. He was gone in 8 months. In that time, Liam appeared more often. He brought friends who talked marketing and digital footprint, and a man with a suit too tight across the shoulders who whispered about asset protection. My stepmother kept saying the word legacy, as if it were a password that would unlock something worth having. I drove Dad to chemotherapy and came home to spreadsheets that weren't mine with columns labeled monetize brand story. The will was read under the portrait of my grandfather that hung crooked no matter how many times we fixed it. The lawyer's office smelled like paper and ink and a faint lemon polish that reminded me of the shop. The words tumbled out with formal edges: the house to my stepmother, savings distributed, and the shock that made my ears ring, the business to Liam. He's more suited to leadership, my stepmother said, as if describing a shirt that fit one of us better. He'll keep you on, of course. We're a family. I thought about Dad's long conversation with me 3 months before he died, his voice thin but steady, telling me not to fight where fighting wasn't going to change the wood's direction. Pressure where the grain allows, he had said. And sometimes you clamp and walk away. I nodded at the lawyer. I nodded at my stepmother. I didn't look at Liam, who put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed too hard, the way you might test if a piece of furniture could hold your weight. He took over quickly. The sign stayed, but the vans got wrapped in a slick version of our logo with a tagline I hated. Interns appeared to film content. He ordered pre-made cabinet boxes and called them modular, leaving our shop to build doors and add handcrafted touches. He fired the receptionist everyone loved because her marinara sauce had always simmered on the back burner for us on long days, and he thought garlic was brand. He cut my hours without admitting he'd done it, and he rewrote copy on our website to talk about his vision as if the old work had been a placeholder for him. 2 weeks after the will, I found the letter. It was folded into a plain shape and tucked behind a row of chisels I'd inherited the first time, when Granddad died and gave them to Dad. The paper was soft, The edges fuzzed where it had been folded and unfolded a dozen times. In my dad's blocky handwriting it said, "If you need to know what I meant by son, go to the bank. Ask about the DBA. Bring the key." The key, the one on my ring that fit nothing I knew, the one he'd pressed into my palm after a bad day and said, "You'll know when to use it." Like a riddle with a clock running. I flipped the paper over and there was a bank name and a branch manager's contact written in the margin. I didn't go immediately. That's the part people don't understand about grief. You move through a fog where everything seems too loud and too slow, and every decision feels like the first time you've thought about anything. Meanwhile, Liam called a town hall at the shop, lined everyone up, and told them we were going to crush Q3. He talked about unit economics and channel partnerships, while my father's watch ticked in my pocket like it knew a separate language. Then came the day with the champagne. He'd just signed a contract with a developer building a row of luxury homes, the kind with kitchen islands big enough to land a plane and cabinet runs that went on longer than some folks' mortgages could bear. He danced on the office rug and someone recorded him with a phone, the ceiling fan whirring overhead so the shadows cut across his face in time with the blades. "Weston and Son is stepping into the big leagues," he shouted. "The Weston legacy is safe with me." Someone clapped. Someone else coughed. I leaned the broom against my thigh and thought, if I say anything now, I'll say too much. Later, quiet settled like dust after a cut and I took out the letter again. The banker's name was Miss Patel. I dialed with the kind of care you use when starting a finicky machine. She answered on the second ring with a professionalism that made me sit up straighter. When I said my name, the full name, not the nickname I used around the shop, there was a pause and then a shift in her tone, like the gears of something slotting into place. "I've been expecting your call," she said. "Your father told me you might come by." I could hear the air conditioner's distant hum and the faint click of a keyboard on her end. "Ring the key he gave you. We can discuss the DBA and the accounts." "DBA?" I asked. "Doing business as. The name under which your business operates," she said, and repeated my name with a calm that felt like a hand on my shoulder in a good way, steadying, not controlling. "The owner of record, it would be best to talk in person." When I hung up, I stared at the letter and then at my hand, the calluses where the handle rubbed, the faint semicircle scar on my thumb from a mistake any time ago when I rushed. I called in sick without telling anyone what I was doing. In the parking lot of the bank, I sat with both hands on the steering wheel and listened to the watch tick in my pocket. I thought about my stepmother's word, legacy, and my father's word, son, and how maybe those weren't synonyms at all. Miss Patel was younger than I expected, with precise hair and kind eyes behind dark frames. She shook my hand like she meant it and invited me into her office. On the desk was a folder already labeled with my name. She waited until the door was closed to open it. "Mr. Weston came to see me 2 years ago," she began. "He asked to separate certain aspects of his business, given his personal situation. He was clear in his intent, and we documented everything accordingly. He left the business to my stepbrother." I said, because if this was a waste of hope, I wanted to know quickly. At least, the will did. The word felt like a betrayal I still couldn't name. Miss Patel nodded. "The will may direct the distribution of shares in the corporation," she said carefully, "but the DBA and the merchant accounts, the name under which the brand, the clients, and the payments flow, are held by the owner of record listed here." She turned a page and slid it across the desk toward me. The form had the county seal stamped near the top, and right below DBA owner was my full name in my father's handwriting. The second page showed the merchant account setup, the beneficiary, and a notation in a neat note that read, "Authorization key held by Ethan." "That's the key?" I asked. "It will open the safe deposit box that contains the certificate and the stamp for the DBA, as well as the trademark registration for the name Weston and Son Woodworks. Your father transferred the trademark to you separately, with an assignment recorded at the state office. He wanted to make sure you had control over the name, regardless of ownership of the corporate entity that currently uses it. He also asked me to tell you," and here she smiled in a way that softened the corners of her eyes, "that he believed you'd know when to use it." I felt dizzy for a second. The chair seemed to tilt under me, the way a plank flexes before it splits. "Liam has the contracts," I heard myself say. "He has the clients. He has the everything else. He has some assets," she corrected gently. "But if the DBA owner does not authorize the use of the name, the bank is obligated to ensure the account activity aligns with the owner of record. And if the trademark owner sends a cease and desist for unauthorized use of the mark. He may not be able to use the name legally on invoices, checks, or merchant accounts. That tends to clarify realities quickly. She tapped the folder lightly. Your father structured it this way because he was concerned people might not act in good faith after he was gone. People, I repeated, and tasted the bitterness at the back of my throat. She folded her hands. I will need you to confirm your identity, and then we can proceed. We can also place a verification note on the merchant accounts so that any transactions inconsistent with the owner of record will trigger a call to you. If you wish to change signatories or freeze anything for review, we can do that too within our policies. But I would advise you to consider the timing and your goals. Driving back to the shop, I felt oddly calm. I thought about clamps and pressure points and how wood gives when and only when you respect its nature. In the parking lot, I watched the vans with the shiny new wraps head out to a job site, the vinyl peeling slightly at one corner where it hadn't been applied with patience. I went inside and picked up a sander because the apprentices were behind and I still cared about the quality of what left that door. Liam swept in mid-morning, wearing a blazer that didn't belong to this place and a grin polished bright. Don't be late tomorrow, he said to me, clapping as if we were on a stage and he was the host. The developers team wants a walkthrough. Big smiles. We are going to blow them away. I'll be there, I said, and felt the weight of the key in my pocket like a coin warmed by the body. That evening, after everyone left, and the shop went quiet except for the refrigerator's faint hum and the click of the cooling heaters, I opened my father's old safe in the office. The combination was in my muscles more than my mind. I'd watched him spin that dial 1,000 times, his lips moving with numbers he never said aloud. Inside was the stamp for the DBA, an old brass seal with letters reversed, and a small velvet pouch that held the trademark certificate rolled tight with a ribbon. The certificate felt unreal in my hands, all those formal words denying the chaos of the past few weeks. I didn't sleep much. I sat at the kitchen table with the documents spread out and the watch ticking beside them. At midnight I wrote an email to Ms. Patel confirming my identity and authorizing the notes and the verification holds. At 2 a.m., I drafted a letter to developer's project manager, introducing myself as the owner of the Weston & Son Woodworks name and the authorized signatory for payments to that brand, asking for a brief call. I didn't send it. Not yet. Pressure where the grain allows, clamp and walk away. The next morning the bank called the shop. The receptionist was gone, so the phone rang into the office where Liam liked to camp. His door was open. The apprentices glanced at me. I kept sanding until he called my name with that theatrical patience people use when they want you to feel like a child. Ethan, he said. What is this? I wiped dust off my hands and stepped into the office. On speaker, Miss Patel's voice was even. For security, she said. We're calling to verify a change in signatories and to confirm that the owner of record approves the continuation of the merchant accounts under the DBA. Liam's face lit with confusion that curdled into impatience. I'm the owner, he said. I have the will. It was Reed. You can call our lawyer. In our records, Miss Patel replied. The DBA owner is Ethan Weston. We'll proceed according to the owner of record. Ethan, are you present to confirm? I felt the eyes of the entire shop gathered at the doorway, heads slightly tilted, beheld. My father's watch ticked, impossibly loud. I could have gloated. I could have grabbed the moment like a trophy. Instead I said, I'm here. Please place the verification holds as we discussed. Keep payments received today pending while we review. We'll avoid interruption if possible. Silence stretched like a line under tension. What did you do? Liam asked finally, color draining from his face in a way I almost felt sorry to watch. Almost. What game is this? No game, I said. Dad transferred the name to me 2 years ago. He gave me the DBA and the trademark. You own the corporation, Liam. But you don't own the name it trades under. The bank is just doing its job. His lips parted and closed. He glanced at the newly wrapped vans as if to confirm they existed. For a moment he looked like any man surprised by the reality he didn't account for. A bird hitting a window and stunned by the glass. My deals, he said softly, almost to himself, and then louder. You can't do this. I can, I said. But I don't want to burn the place down. We can figure out a path that honors what's been built without cheapening it. Keep your contracts if you can fulfill them without the name. Or we negotiate licensing. Or we separate the custom shop from the production line. But we'll do it with respect. He stared at me as if I'd spoken a language he didn't understand. The apprentices hovered. The clock kept time. That afternoon, the developer called me back. We got a note from our accounting about a mismatch on the merchant account name. The project manager said, "Ethan, is it? Can we talk?" We met in their office, a glass box with a view of a street that had been stripped of trees to make way for homes that looked like magazines. I brought copies of the DBA and the trademark assignment, and, because I believed in the comfort of objects, I brought one of our chairs. A ladder, backweed made of white oak, smooth as a river stone. I set it down long, wise across the table so they could run their hands over the rail. "We've always paid the brand," the project manager said, palms on the back of the chair. "If the brand belongs to you, who's going to put cabinets in our homes?" "The shop is staffed by people who know how to build," I said. "The corporation that currently employs them is reorganizing. I intend to keep the custom shop and the brand aligned with quality. If you want a boutique build for the show home, I can deliver it. If you want modular boxes dressed to look custom, you'll find a way, but the name on the invoice will be different." They looked at each other. They were used to money smoothing conversations, and money didn't mean the same thing to me as it did to them. After a pause, the project manager said, "We'll split. Show model by you. The rest, we'll see." When I returned, Liam was waiting at the shop's back door, with the kind of anger that turns a face into a map of red seas. "You blindsided me," he said. "You're nothing without this business." "I'm nothing without the work," I corrected. "Not without the name. Those are different things." I offered a way to coexist. "You can fuck me over or you can work it out. But I won't let you stand on what Dad built and sell it as your show." He laughed, short and brittle. "Dad built it for my mother," he said, as if it were a trump card. "He told her he wanted to ensure she was taken care of." "I believe that," I said, because I did. "He also told me he wanted me to protect what he meant when he said and son. That doesn't go through you." Lawyers got involved within days. Letters went back and forth with phrases that felt like antique weapons. Enjoined, irrevocable, assignment, infringement. I signed licensing terms that allowed Liam to wind down existing contracts over 6 months, using a temporary alternative name, with the bank releasing payments once the invoices reflected the change. He raged at the timeline, and then raged quieter when our stepmother told him to stop bleeding money on principle. Meanwhile, I turned the front half of the shop into the world my father and I had always imagined it. A room full of wood that spoke when you touched it, a counter that showed its scars proudly, a rhythm of work that had nothing to do with viral videos and everything to do with edges meeting edges without a gap. Not everyone stayed. One of the apprentices left with Liam to help build the modular side he believed would scale fast. Another stayed and learned how to joint a board until it sang. The receptionist came back because I called her. Not because she needed the job, but because she said she missed hearing the stories people told about their kitchens. The first week we were back in business under the name I now stamped with my own hands. A couple came in, early retirees with soft voices, and ordered a table. We heard about what happened. They said, almost apologetic, "We want the table to be heavy enough to outlast our arguments." I smiled so hard my face had a rest afterward. One night, long after closing, I found Liam standing at the threshold between the shop and the office, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. He held his blazer like a shield against a weather he didn't understand. "I didn't know about the bank," he said quietly. "She didn't tell me." He meant his mother. He meant that part of the story where a promise got made that included the person on the other side of it. He told her the business was hers to direct. He protected her house, I said. He protected the part where he didn't have to think about bills for a while. And he protected this. I gestured around me. Those can be the same thing, but they aren't automatically. I think he knew you'd be good at selling a promise. He didn't want you selling ours. Liam exhaled a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. You think I don't care about the work. I think you care about a different part of it, I replied. You see the deal. I see the joinery. There isn't a villain in that unless someone tries to pretend they're the same. He ran a hand through his hair and nodded, a motion so brief I might have imagined it. The bank, he said, as if the word itself might still be argued with. They called you and said the owner name on record. I've never seen Miss Paddle not take my calls. She's doing her job, I said. It's not about you. He left a minute later. We weren't friends, we weren't family in any easy sense, but we were finally honest. In the months that followed, things steadied. The modular side rebranded under a name that sounded like a kitchen gadget, and he found clients who loved the reliability of the same thing in 6 different colors. We delivered the show home kitchen late but flawless, And the project manager ran his hand over the white oak rail and said, "This is what sells houses people actually want to live in." The bank released payments the day invoices matched paperwork. I learned the shape of the new business with my name on it, the loneliness and the relief. Every morning I turned the key in the lock and felt a little jolt. That was part fear, part gratitude. On the anniversary of the day the will ate the room, I climbed the ladder and straightened my grandfather's portrait where it hung in the office. It still leaned, just slightly. Maybe that was its nature. I set the old brass stamp on the counter, where customers signed, and when a young couple came in to talk about bedroom cabinets. The man traced the letters with his finger as if they were braille. "Weston and Son," he said, and smiled without knowing why. At closing, I pulled my father's watch from my pocket and set it on the workbench. I wound it the way he'd shown me as a kid. One finger gentle on the crown. The ticking filled the room in a way that was less like a clock and more like a heartbeat returning to a body that had been cold. I thought about the morning with the champagne and the way I had stood still, broom a shield and a witness. I thought about Miss Patel's voice saying my full name, and the developer's hand on the smooth rail, and my stepbrother's white face when the bank said owner of record and named me. Anger leaves a residue. So does love. What I learned that year is you have to sand both with patience until the grain of your life shows clean again. You can't force wood to be something it isn't. And you can't force a person either. But you can decide where the pressure goes. You can decide which names you answer to, and which ones you stamp with your own hands. When I lock up now, I run my thumb along the underside of the counter where my father carved my name. The letters are worn smooth by the years and the oils from our hands. And I know what he meant when he said, "Son." He didn't mean blood. He meant the work. He meant the silence you keep until the right moment. The moment when a bank calls and a voice reads a name and there is no need to raise yours. He meant a legacy that stays put even when other people rearrange the furniture. On my way out, I turn off the lights one by one, leaving the office clock to tick in the dark, steady and indifferent. The brass key is warm in my pocket. Outside, the night smells like rain and cut wood. I pull the door shut, and the click of the lock is the cleanest sound I know.